The day my husband, Thomas Hart, died, I still had his coffee cup on the kitchen counter. It was half full, cold, and forgotten, just like the future he promised me. We had been married for 23 years, long enough to build a life, long enough to believe in safety, long enough to think I was part of a family. My name is Eleanor Hart. I am 62 years old, and 3 days after Thomas was buried, his sons came to take everything. Ryan and Lucas arrived without warning, not with flowers, not with sympathy. They walked straight into Thomas's home office like they owned it, the same room where he used to read the morning news, the same desk where he once held my hand when he told me he was afraid of getting sick. Ryan was the older one, tall, confident, always dressed like a man who expected the world to bend for him. Lucas stood beside him, quieter but just as watchful. Their eyes were not filled with grief. They were filled with calculation. "Eleanor," Ryan said, using my name like it was a formality, "we need to talk about the estate." The word estate hit me harder than any condolence. My husband was not even cold in the ground, and they were already dividing his life like inventory. Lucas added, "We know this is a hard time, but there are legal matters that need to be handled right away." I looked at them, standing in Thomas's office, breathing the air of a house they had never helped maintain. They had not been here during the long hospital nights. They had not sat beside Thomas when the doctors spoke in quiet voices. They had not held his hand when he whispered that he was scared. But here they were now, ready to claim what they believed was theirs. "What legal matters?" I asked. Ryan opened a folder and laid it on my husband's desk. Inside were documents that looked heavy with authority. "According to Dad's will," he said, "the primary residence, the lake house, and the business assets go to Lucas and me." My heart skipped. Our home, the house Thomas and I shared, the place where we had laughed, argued, and planned the rest of our lives. "And me?" I asked. Lucas shifted slightly. "There is a life insurance policy for you. $200,000. $200,000 for a woman who had given up her career to support a family that never truly saw her? That was the moment I understood something terrible. They did not see me as Thomas's wife. They saw me as an obstacle, and they were ready to remove me. For a few seconds after Lucas spoke, I could not find my voice. $200,000 sounded like a large number until I compared it to the life I was about to lose. Ryan leaned against Thomas's desk, as if he already owned it. "The house you are sitting in is valued at about $900,000, he said. "The lake house is worth around $700,000. The company brings in steady revenue. Dad wanted all of that to stay in the family." The family, not me. I nodded slowly, trying to stay calm. "And where am I supposed to live?" I asked. "You have 30 days, Ryan replied without hesitation. "That should be enough time to make arrangements." 30 days to pack up 23 years of memories, 30 days to find a new home, move my belongings, and somehow grieve at the same time? Lucas added, "We're not trying to be unkind, Eleanor, but Dad always believed that blood matters when it comes to legacy." Blood matters, as if love, loyalty, and years of sacrifice meant nothing? I thought about the way Thomas used to hold my hand in the evenings when we sat on the couch. I thought about how he used to call me his anchor, and now his sons were telling me I was worth less than a small insurance policy. "There is also something else," Ryan said, his tone shifting. "During Dad's illness, he accumulated medical bills. Insurance covered most of it, but there is still about $180,000 outstanding." My chest tightened. That was almost all the insurance money. "Those bills are your responsibility," Lucas said softly. "You were his wife. You made decisions together. Legally, the hospital will come after you." "So let me get this straight," I said. "You take the houses, you take the company, you take the future Thomas and I built, and I take the debt?" Ryan did not deny it. "That's how the will is written." I looked around the office one last time. The shelves, the window, the picture of Thomas and me on our wedding day. They were not just taking property, they were erasing me. And the worst part was not even the money. It was the way they stood there, calm and polite, while they destroyed my life as if it were nothing more than paperwork. That afternoon, I sat across from Mark Delaney, the lawyer Thomas had trusted for years. His office was quiet, filled with framed certificates and shelves of thick law books that smelled faintly of dust and ink. "Eleanor," he said gently, "you do not have to accept this. The will they showed you can be challenged." I looked at him, exhausted. On what grounds? There are serious irregularities, Mark replied. Thomas made changes shortly before he died. We can argue that he was under pressure or not fully informed. We can slow everything down and force Ryan and Lucas to negotiate. Slow everything down. The words felt heavy. How long would that take? I asked. Months at least, possibly years. And what do I live on during that time? Mark hesitated. You would still receive the insurance money, but the medical bills could wipe most of that out before the case is resolved. So I would be broke, stressed, and fighting two men who had no problem crushing me? Mark leaned forward. Eleanor, they are counting on you being too tired and too scared to fight back. That's how people like Ryan and Lucas win. I stared at my hands. They looked older than they used to. Thinner, worn. Thomas always promised me I would be safe, I said quietly, that I would never have to worry about money. Mark nodded. That's why this makes no sense. This will does not sound like Thomas. What if I don't fight? I asked. Mark blinked. You mean you would just sign everything over? What if I let them have what they think they want? How fast could it be done? Eleanor, you would be giving up your rights. There would be no going back. How fast? A week, maybe 2. I closed my eyes. Fighting would drain what little strength I had left, but giving up felt like stepping into a dark room without knowing what was inside. I'm not weak, I said quietly. I'm just tired of being treated like I'm nothing. Mark looked at me with concern. I think you're making a mistake. Maybe, I replied, but it's a mistake I'm choosing. That night, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the quiet that Thomas used to fill. Every sound felt louder without him, the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, my own breathing. I thought about fighting, about standing in court while Ryan and Lucas watched me with those cold eyes. I imagined months of lawyers, hearings, and whispered judgments about the greedy stepmother who wanted more than her share. I did not have the strength for that kind of war, so I made a different choice. I called Mark Delaney the next morning and told him I was ready to sign whatever Ryan and Lucas needed. He tried to talk me out of it again. I let him, but my mind was already made up. They think I'm surrendering, I told him. Let them believe that. Grief does strange things to people. It makes you look weak. It makes others think you can step over you. Ryan and Lucas had already decided I was beaten, but what they didn't know was that I was done asking for fairness. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who sees everything. When I hung up the phone, I walked into Thomas's office one last time. The smell of his cologne still lingered. His chair was still slightly turned, as if he had just stepped away. I rested my hand on his desk. You always told me to trust my instincts, I whispered, and as if in answer, my fingers brushed against something inside the small drawer, a tiny brass key. I picked it up and turned it over in my palm. It was old, worn, important, and in that moment, I knew Thomas had left me empty-handed. He had left me a door. The key did not belong to any lock in the house. I tried every cabinet, every drawer, every storage room. It fit nowhere. Yet Thomas had hidden it in the one place he kept only the things that mattered. I slipped it into my purse and went about my day, pretending I was just another grieving widow packing up her life. Ryan and Lucas called twice to ask if I had spoken to Mark. Their voices were polite but rushed. They wanted this done quickly, and that alone made me uneasy. Thomas had never rushed anything that involved money. He had always said slow decisions were safer decisions, but his sons were acting like men afraid of running out of time. That night, I sat in the kitchen turning the key between my fingers. It felt heavier than it should have been. "What did you leave me, Thomas?" I whispered. The next morning, I found the answer by accident. I was sorting through his wallet, the one the hospital had returned to me in a sealed bag. Behind his driver's license was a small card I had never seen before. First National Bank was printed on it in simple black letters. On the back, in Thomas's handwriting, was one number, 379. I stared at it for a long time. Then I looked at the key in my hand. A safety deposit box. My heart began to pound. Thomas had never mentioned a box, never mentioned anything hidden, and yet here it was, something he had not trusted anyone else with, not even his sons. I grabbed my purse and my coat and drove to the bank before doubt could stop me. I did not tell Ryan. I did not tell Lucas. For the first time since Thomas died, something inside me felt awake. If there was a truth buried in that box, I was about to find it. The bank was quiet in the early morning, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like every sound matters. A woman at the front desk looked up when I gave her Thomas's name and the number 379. Her expression softened. "Mr. Hart was here often," she said. "Please follow me." She led me down a narrow hallway and into a vault that smelled faintly of metal and cold air. Rows of steel boxes lined the walls, like silent witnesses. "Only you and your husband were listed on this box," she added, as she unlocked it. "He opened it about 6 months ago." 6 months ago, right when Thomas started getting sick. The box was heavier than I expected. She placed it in a small private room and left me alone. My hands were shaking when I lifted the lid. Inside were folders, letters, bank statements, photographs, everything neatly arranged like Thomas had prepared it for me. I picked up a bank statement first. It was for an account called Hart Holdings. The balance made my breath catch. $4.7 million. There was a handwritten note on it in Thomas's familiar script. "Eleanor, this is our real savings. I moved it so the boys could not touch it." Tears blurred my vision. We were not broke. We were not helpless. Thomas had been protecting me. I opened another folder and felt my stomach drop. It contained emails between Ryan and someone I did not know. The messages were cold and calculating. "Dad is getting worse," Ryan had written. "We need to move the assets before she figures anything out." The reply was worse. "Once he signs, everything will be under the new companies. The wife will not understand what happened until it's too late." They had been planning this while Thomas was dying. The next folder held photographs. Ryan walking into a casino, Lucas meeting with men in dark suits, financial records showing massive debts and failed investments. And then I saw it. Another will, dated just weeks before Thomas died. This one left everything to me. My hands pressed against the table to keep from falling. They were using the wrong will. The one they showed me was not the last one Thomas signed. He had outsmarted them, and he had left me the proof. At the bottom of the box was a letter in Thomas's handwriting, sealed in an envelope with my name on it. "Eleanor, open this after you have read everything else." My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. "My dearest Eleanor," it began, "if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the boys have shown you who they really are." He wrote about how Ryan and Lucas suddenly became attentive when his health declined, how they asked strange questions about bank accounts and property titles, how their concern did not feel like love, but like fear of losing control. "So I hired an investigator," he wrote. "I needed to know the truth." The truth was worse than I imagined. Ryan was using the business as collateral for gambling debts. Lucas was moving money from clients into secret accounts. They were not just greedy, they were dangerous. Thomas explained how he moved the money into Hart Holdings, how he changed his will, and how he placed everything in that box for me to find. "The houses," he wrote, "are not gifts. I mortgaged them heavily. If the boys take them, they take the debt too." I had to sit down. Thomas had turned their greed into a trap. The final lines of his letter made my chest ache. "I am sorry I could not tell you while I was alive. I did not want to put you in danger, but I needed you to be safe when I was gone. I have given you the choice, Eleanor. Do what you think is right." For the first time since Thomas died, I felt something close to peace. He had not abandoned me. He had been standing beside me the whole time. That evening, Ryan invited me to dinner at his house. Lucas and his wife would be there too. He said it would be nice to spend time together as a family before everything was finalized. I almost laughed. They sat across from me at a table set with expensive plates and wine they probably could not afford. They smiled. They asked how I was holding up. They spoke as if they cared. Ryan talked about renovating the lake house. Lucas mentioned selling the company. They were already spending what they thought was theirs. I nodded and sipped my water, thinking about the files in the safety deposit box. At one point, I mentioned the key I had found in Thomas's desk. Ryan froze for half a second. Lucas's fork stopped mid-air. "A safety deposit box," I said casually. "Strange, isn't it?" Ryan forced a smile. "Dad always liked to hide things." "I thought maybe I should check it before we sign anything," I added. Lucas cleared his throat. That might not be necessary. We don't want you to get confused by paperwork." "Confused?" I smiled politely. Thomas always said I was smarter than people thought. They did not laugh. As dessert was served, I realized they were afraid, and fear told me I was exactly where Thomas wanted me to be. The next morning, we met at Mark Delaney's office. Ryan and Lucas sat on one side of the table, their lawyer beside them. I sat across with Victor Lane. They tried to control the room from the first second. "There has been a misunderstanding," Ryan said. "Someone is claiming there is another will." Victor calmly opened his briefcase. Not claiming, producing. He slid documents across the table. The real will, the bank records, the mortgage filings. Mark stared at the pages. "These were not in my file." "That's because Thomas fired your firm," Victor said quietly. "He did not trust anyone who shared information with his sons." Lucas went pale. Ryan slammed his hand on the table. "This is fraud." "No," Victor replied. "What you did was fraud." He turned to the mortgage documents. "The house you think you are inheriting has a loan of $1.2 million against it. The lake property has $800,000 in debt." Ryan laughed nervously. "That's impossible." "Exactly," Victor said. Silence fell over the room. Then came the bank records, evidence of Ryan's gambling, Lucas's stolen client money, recorded calls. "You were stealing from a dying man. That is called elder abuse." Mark looked like he was about to faint. Ryan turned to me. "Eleanor, you don't believe this, do you?" I folded my hands. Thomas believed it, and he prepared for it. Lucas whispered, "We're ruined." "Not yet," Victor said. "You still have a choice." The room waited. For the first time, they were not in control. I was. Victor placed one final document in front of me. "This is a gift deed. It transfers the house and the lake property to Ryan and Lucas." Ryan's eyes lit up. "That's more like it." I picked up the pen. "I wanted everything," I said softly. "I'm giving it to you." I signed. Their lawyer smiled for exactly 2 seconds. Then he read the fine print. The color drained from his face. "The properties transfer with all existing mortgages," he said slowly. "The debt moves with the title." Ryan stared at him. "What debt?" $1.2 million on the house, Victor said. $800,000 on the lake house. Lucas stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You said they were paid off." "They were not," Victor replied. "Thomas made sure of that." Ryan's voice cracked. "You set us up." "No," I said calmly. "You set yourselves up when you tried to steal from your father." Victor added, "You can accept this inheritance, or you can walk away, or you can go to prison." Ryan looked at Lucas. Lucas looked at the floor. They signed, because fear is louder than pride, and that was the moment they finally understood what it means to lose. 3 months later, the houses were gone. Ryan could not refinance the loans. Neither could Lucas. The banks took both properties and still came after them for what was left unpaid. Ryan filed for bankruptcy. His gambling problem was no longer a secret. The court ordered him into treatment. His law license was suspended. Lucas lost what was left of his business. The clients he had cheated pressed charges. He took a job managing night shifts at a hotel near the airport. Their world collapsed exactly as fast as they tried to take mine. Bianca left. She said she did not marry a man who could not pay his own bills. They tried to call me. I did not answer. Thomas had given me peace, and they had given themselves ruin. I sold the remaining shares of Thomas's investments and moved to a small coastal town where the ocean met the sky. My new house was not large, but it was mine. No memories of tension, no footsteps that reminded me of betrayal. I planted a garden in the backyard. Roses, lavender, herbs. Every plant felt like a small promise that something new could grow after everything had been burned down. For the first time in decades, I woke up without anxiety in my chest. No one was watching me. No one was waiting for me to fail. I took painting classes at the community center. I volunteered at a local shelter. I learned how to enjoy quiet mornings with coffee and the sound of waves. Thomas had not just left me money. He had left me freedom. And freedom feels like breathing after being underwater for years. I was no longer the woman Ryan and Lucas dismissed. I was simply Eleanor, and that was enough. If there's one thing this story taught me, it's this. Never mistake silence for weakness. Ryan and Lucas believed I was small because I did not scream. They believed I was powerless because I did not fight in the way they expected. But quiet people see more, and they remember more. If you're listening to this and you feel trapped by family, by a partner, or by people who treat you like you don't matter, remember this. You do not need to be loud to be strong. You need to be patient. You need to be observant. And when the time is right, you need to choose yourself. Thomas gave me the tools, but I gave myself the courage to use them, and that made all the difference. If this story meant something to you, take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read them all. And if you want more stories about quiet strength and smart revenge, make sure you subscribe to The Art of Revenge. Your story is not over. Sometimes the best chapter comes after everything falls apart.